um, from a from a tool standpoint, we talk about capabilities, and those three big pieces, fall across three different areas. Statistical analysis, when we talk about predictive modeling, campaign evaluation, and test design and analysis, they're data intensive. And the idea that you've got data marts and you have data built all the way through to the end product becomes really important. And when we talk about financial planning right at the beginning, business case development, how do we talk about P&L metric integration? When we talk about profit, we talk about cost. At the end of the day, that translates into ROI. Having those metrics ready to drive the marketing analysis is sometimes overlooked. And then finally, it's reporting. And so what we had up until about 2 years ago when we started our journey was Crystal Excelsius, and that was really a kind of a landmark piece from a reporting standpoint. It's visual, it's engaging, it's really, really exciting, but it's ad hoc. And so it's not something that you can scale. When we talk about having a whole page full of clients and we want to really get the benefits of having that reporting function, that was really what pushed us to continue to go forward. And so from an asset standpoint and how the process worked, our clients all fall in three great big verticals. The first is automotive, CPG, recreational vehicles, and home goods. And each of these industry verticals have their own independent processes and data. They have dedicated teams that go through to develop the strategy and execute advertising and deploy it into the marketplace. And so just like the teams to execute the advertising, the analysis all happens on an ad hoc basis. And so the independent nature of that means that everybody is carrying the entire cost of maintaining, aggregating, reporting, both the processes and the reporting. So when we talk about real analytical insight and pushing the boundary of how complex analysis kind of takes root, you're in a position where no one client can really afford to do that, and it becomes a barrier to really kind of pushing the envelope. And so what happened about 2.5 years ago is we had a new client join the roster. So Subaru came on board at the end of 2007, and one of the great big things that happened right at the beginning of that relationship was a request from the client about creating an executive marketing dashboard that measures the performance of the strategic choices we make together continuously. And that last little word is what changed kind of the whole BI strategy that we were going down, because we have no real ability to repeat that on a constant basis and no real way to really scale it. So when we talk about, so we got our text box in there, 5 or 6 really important things as we are kind of going forward. And the first piece is easy to maintain. So as we brought a new client on board and we start talking about just the number of data sources that we were going to deal with, being able to update those on a continual basis almost becomes a burden if we don't develop the BI structure to support it. And for where we sit, it's about scaling it across multiple divisions and clients. And one of the things that we see with MicroStrategy in particular, and especially Lancet, is that their approach is set up on a client side. You call it business units, but it's set up to go across different pieces of data, leverage the common platform, and then deploy reporting. Well, we kind of translate that business unit logic into clients for us because it acts pretty much the same way. And so being able to have a scalable platform was critical. The other big thing is a platform that's used and integrated inside an expert organization. One of the things that we recognize right out of the gate, being a small, mid-sized advertising agency, is that we don't have a large IT department. And Lancet and the team goes to great lengths to bring in experts to help us with the IT side of it. But as far as an integration into the business, we really wanted to see best-in-class case studies kind of guide us through our journey so that we weren't kind of cutting the road for the first time. And that dovetails really into an expert user community. Talk about how do you customize and deal with specific problems. And so really the bigger the platform is, the better for us. And the other really important thing is that it plays well in our client's IT sandbox. And what we mean by that is we are an advertising agency and we're there to deliver analytics and insight. In order to do that, we need data. But what we don't want to do is compete with our clients' IT departments. And we really think it plays well with the different data sources that we come to the table with. We obviously need some of our clients' data, but being able to kind of share that and keep it open and transparent became really, really important. And at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to influence key decisions. And so what we got was pretty simple, simple and complicated approach. So, identify the right product. And so after a long review, we landed on MicroStrategy. We talked about establishing a partnership with a guide, and that's really our friends at Lancet Software. Having folks that are experts at the platform and experts at integrating it becomes really, really important. And the last thing, as far as some advice, is starting with the questions that you intend to answer and then work backwards. So all the way at the end, those choices and the decisions, what it is that we're trying to do, and then go all the way back from the data that we're going to start with. And lastly, act like the process is really easy. I think the biggest thing, especially where we come from, is that if it sounds really complicated, it becomes a barrier. And so what we want to do is make it sound like it's really, really easy.
It sounds like a very Zen approach. Pretend it's easy and it will be?
That's the idea.
Okay. So how Lancet dovetailed into this is that we have what we call the 5 disciplines of business intelligence. Obviously, with everything in the center, there's executing on the project, and everybody kind of gets that. You have to be able to define a project, have a plan, develop that plan, deploy the end result, and have everybody be happy. But we like to take it several steps further, and you'll see some rings around the project, which include a program. How are we going to handle demand from our user community? Business integration. How is this going to dovetail into the culture of the organization and influence the decisions that Greg was talking about? Now, in this case, Carmichael Lynch was already tuned into that. Many organizations, what we find is that the IT side is driving business intelligence, and the culture of the organization hasn't been brought along to start making decisions based on data. I think you guys were already tuned into that thought process, right? I mean, you have people that were hungry for that data, and we have other organizations where the IT department's trying to push it out, but the culture hasn't been built up to accept it. So that's part of it, and then we have then sort of the more mundane stuff down at the bottom, the architecture, the technology, how's this stuff going to run, the operations and service level management, how are we going to do all this stuff? And keep it running, and have it running day after day, and be reliable, and make sure that Carmichael Lynch's clients can come in and get these dashboards on a very reliable basis without having 15 guys in the engine room of the IT department making sure that it's happening. It's got to be relatively inexpensive to operate. So building that infrastructure is very key to having it accepted by the organization from a cost standpoint.
Perfect. And just what we were talking about, starting with the questions and working backwards. And so like Tom was saying, the consumers to this information are already present. So integrating the data into, really into the organization wasn't as big of a challenge. And what they did when really scoping out what is the data, what's the scope for what we want to capture, it started in the form of questions. And so at the center, we talk about the marketing dashboard and really the marketing data mart environment. And we end up with these big verticals where it starts with what's the state of the economy. And what went into that was 18 different economic metrics, gas prices, a consumer confidence index, housing starts, retail sales, a lot of different data that's publicly available, and we're going to see that dashboard a little bit later. But at the end of the day, it's about answering that story. What's the state of the economy, and obviously as it relates to automotive sales. And as we move around, who's buying our vehicles? Are we attracting shoppers? What's the health of the brand? What media are we running? How much does it cost? What's the competitive activity in there? What about the word on the street? What's happening out in the field, the marketplace? And then in a total, what's the state of the new car market? And so that provides the framework for us to go through, and then we start sourcing data. What actually drives that? And so for us, we have this mix of all sorts of different kinds of data sources, and so acquiring that data was really a big task, and that's why making sure that everything is relatively easy to maintain became important. So from just a step standpoint, acquiring that data is lion's share of time. It moves into the ETL process and then loads into the SQL server, which is going to combine all that standardized data now with the key lookup tables. And then finally, the reporting in the environment. for lack of a better term, updates itself because all of the references are already there. But we did have a couple of technical issues as we went through to actually deploying, and I'll let kind of Tom talk about some of the barriers that were specific for Carmichael Lynch.
Right. Two significant ones were that their existing internal processes they basically had guys inside Carmichael Lynch manufacturing data, if you will,
right,
analyzing the states of markets, and the output of that would be typically Excel spreadsheets, but they were not very data warehouse friendly. They were meant for human consumption, pretty much. And we didn't want to stop the project and have these guys have to stop, redo all their processes, recreate all their work in a different format, or probably in some cases in two formats. And then the flash dashboards that MicroStrategy produces are fantastic, and they're really good looking. But they can be, if you put a lot of data into them, they can be relatively large. So they can be anywhere from 5 to 25 megabytes, which tends to be a problem when you're trying to email them out to people. So those were the two big technical barriers. I mean, and in a normal data warehousing project, you have lots of challenges, but these were two particular ones that weren't solved by out-of-the-box technology. So the first thing we did was we attacked the data sources, because we had, I think you mentioned, 17 different data sources, of which some of them were externally purchased, some of them were from the client, and some of them were from your own internal processes where people were taking data and crunching some numbers, applying some human intelligence to them perhaps, and outputting them in a human-readable Excel spreadsheet. So the first thing we did was we wrote a custom .NET application to extract the data out of these spreadsheets, and that allowed the staff to continue their work basically without any concern for what the data warehouse would be. So problem solved. It took a little bit of work, but basically some straightforward programming. Then we had to come up with a better way to distribute very large flash dashboards. And for those of you that know MicroStrategy, some of you don't, but the dashboards are generally sent out wrapped in what's called an MHT file, which is there's really two problems with it, I guess. There are two potential problems. One is it's a sort of a unified big blob of data. It has all the sort of web page flash functionality and data wrapped into this one file, which can be very large. And the second is that it's only viewable through Internet Explorer. And MicroStrategy in general is plays very well with every browser on the market, from Safari to Opera to Internet Explorer and Firefox. But the MHT files do not, as far as I know. And there was some concern about that, as well as just the size. So what we did was we dipped into our programming toolbox, and this may interest some of you who are doing MicroStrategy dashboards. We've created a splitter program that takes the MHT file and grinds it up and spits out its component parts into nice folders, and you can actually drop that on a web server and people can come in and view that, or you can email the component pieces. You can zip them up into smaller packages and email them that way. So it has a couple of benefits, and I believe the way Carmichael Lynch is doing it is they basically post that stuff over on their own internal web server, and their clients can come in and look at that dashboard. So there's some other benefits around that in terms of licensing and different things like that, which we can go into in the Q&A if anyone's interested.
Mm-hmm. And so then we talk about really the reporting hierarchy. Once they solved the issue of how we're going to move these huge flash documents around, which is going to be the lion's share of who the consumers of the reporting is, started talking about MicroStrategy and how we develop and what kind of reports there are. So on that last slide, you saw a little bit about the layout. We work inside of probably 9 big verticals of dashboards, but we wanted to separate who the users are. So up at the top, we talk about executives. What we talk about are marketing effectiveness summary. A single page limited to just key metrics of inside business drivers, leading indicators, and diagnostics. Limited interactivity so that it's print perfect. So that's something that's meant to be shipped out. It doesn't get posted on top of the website. It's meant to go straight to folks that aren't going to spend a whole lot of time really diagnosing and exploring the data. But once we get a step down below that, our marketing strategists and the marketing analysts that really want to explore inside those interactive dashboards. There's a lot of data in there, and the focus of those really is about customer behavior and program costing. A lot of metrics and a lot of different dimensions, but at the end of the day, it's predefined reports supporting like a guided analysis. And one of the terms that we used to talk about is being able to do an analysis and nobody kind of gets hurt, putting some bumpers around how to actually do the analysis, and it's really what we're hoping to get out of our interactive dashboards. And then a step below that, our marketing analysts have access to the MicroStrategy platform. And so the platform is a Carmichael Lynch asset, and we deliver reporting through it, which is why the Flash documents and splitting up becomes so important. But we do want to have the ability for some of our clients to come onto the platform if they've got marketing analysts that want to go deeper. And that's exciting because it's really a flip of the switch. MicroStrategy version 9 has a web analyst interface. And so as we've deployed that with one of our clients, as we go into Subaru, after about a year of use, that's what happened. A very small group inside the organization, really data-hungry, really strong users, get to the point that they want to get outside of the predefined dashboards and reach out, and from a licensing standpoint, we have to deal with that. But it becomes something more complicated than purchase a license, here's a website, authenticate, and now you can access all the data and mix and match and build ad hoc reports. And finally, from a marketing analytics standpoint, which is where the research group at Carmichael Lynch gets really, that's where we're really geared, and that's the SQL Server. So that's the data. Now everything is referenced and standardized inside of a robust and structured environment, and we can start talking about building predictive analytic models because all of the data is all tied together. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the reporting. So our one-page summary is what you're looking at, and for the most part, you're seeing a lot of sales data, which you can get out of the New York Times from an automotive standpoint at any given month. But it's meant to be a snapshot in time, very, very simple, light interactivity, and being able to get deployed. So the background changes out every month. Because it's Flash and it's MHT, you can change all those components periodically. And so the next slide, we'll go back to really the layout, and we're going to take you through just two of the panels. Both the economy and our media spend. And so I'm going to have Tom kind of pop out of our PowerPoint and open up the economy dashboard, and you can see what we're seeing is the economy is still in its MHT format. And the structure we've got here is pervasive through the whole dashboard. So we've got a rolling 13 months of data. We have gas prices, consumer confidence, and a lot of different economic indicators from different parts of the economy. So to access different metrics that are kind of inside of the same realm, we have drop-down boxes, and the charts open up. And one of the really, really cool things about the dashboard through all of the different panels is its ability to do trend calculations. And so when you hover over the x-axis on any of these charts, it drives the calculations of the table down below. So when you click on that x-axis label, you'll notice on the bottom that the month-over-month, year-over-year, and year-to-date calculations all dynamically change. And so what you get is this feeling that you're really doing on-the-fly ad hoc analysis, but the truth is the time frames, the calculations from month-over-month has all been predefined for you. So every matrix, every cell that you can get out of this really kind of has bumpers put on it. And so we have the ability to make sure that from a data integrity standpoint and from an end user standpoint that we can manage all those expectations. And so that's the economic view. And then I want to take a little time and show you how we look at marketing cost data, and also hit on the fact that that MHT file now gets split. And so what we do inside that folder, inside the media spend folder.
Right, I was just going to point out that here's the media spend MHT file, and you'll see that it's 3.5 megabytes, basically. And when we run our splitter program on it, it creates a folder of the same name, media spend, and inside of that are all the components that are in the MHT. And and here's the main document, which is the starting point. All the rest of it are images, flash files, and so on. So I'll open that.
The reason we wanted to show this one is, especially from the weight of the file, we have some diagnostics on media spending, costing, and trending, but if you flip over to the Detail tab, what you'll see is we've loaded a whole bunch of FLV media files. So obviously we create commercials, and what we have is the ability to do a drop-down. And so from an advertising standpoint, we know what's running at the time, and we can get a visual representation. Now, each of these FLV files in themselves are multi-megs. So this panel is really the poster child for what makes that MHT so cool.
I never felt comfortable driving in to get a shot of the flyout. But then, I got a Subaru Forester.
And obviously, for any of the folks out there that are current MicroStrategy customers, you know that you can pipe in virtually anything. That can be a live online window. We choose to show our TV commercial assets, but there's infinite possibilities.
I am present.
So as we move along, there's a company called Marketing NPV out there, and Pat LaPointe, who's managing partner, made a comment about a year ago, quote, and talking about marketing performance measurement and just about how much organizational clarity, alignment, and stakeholdering is as important as research, analytics, and data collection. And so we go through this whole process, and we talk about how to systemically change decisions, drive reporting, data, and at the end of the day, our next slide is really just a video of what that journey looks like and just how simple and emotional it can feel.
To grow the Subaru brand, we had to turn owner love into a beaconing strategy. One that connected with an entirely new audience and stuck with them, all the way from consideration to sale. For the previous 10 years, Subaru had flatlined, no growth in share or units. We had to grow, but we had the lowest budget in nearly a decade. And more importantly, we had to reverse a history of poor decisions that had walled off opportunity for growth. The first step was changing the channel mix. It was all wrong. It didn't leverage one of our greatest assets, the audience itself and their penchant for word of mouth. Once we fixed that, we leveraged every penny in media to create content our audience would love and would talk about. And in everything we did, we structured for results. An excellent example of this was our partnership with NBC Universal. We used their top talent like Masioka from Heroes to create vignettes, and we ran them throughout Green Week on all 40 NBC TV properties. The results were astounding. We had our target's attention, and were enjoying the highest levels of brand consideration ever. We needed to close the loop and make sure we had more than our fair share of shoppers, and the website was the most important thing to get us there. We reconstructed our plan to capture them at every opportunity, and that meant recreating the online shopping process, from search to sale. Search was critical traffic driver, and our SEM SEO optimization process doubled its effectiveness and cut costs in half. We also expanded our optimization efforts across automotive shopping sites and redesigned Subaru.com to better satisfy user needs to get them in a dealership. The new approach really paid off for Subaru. Since our team got involved, Subaru has enjoyed their best 2 years on record, even as the industry has experienced their worst performance in decades. And we're not looking back.
So kind of as we wrap up and open up for questions, the big thing for us, what our clients really want to know, and it typically falls into one of two camps. Our CMO is talking about, what's the value the enterprise can expect from a 20% increase in the marketing budget, and then the CFO talking about what the financial risk of, cutting the marketing budget by 20%. And those questions rarely come in a year in advance or 6 months in advance. They typically come in with a month to go, And it's the scrambling and the analysis to really explore and put some rigor into answering those questions. And I think that from a data standpoint and a reporting standpoint, the goal should be built around addressing those questions. And so finally, it's keeping it simple. Data and reporting and analytics isn't the product. Thinking in terms of business questions and the actions they influence. And then finally, it's about picking the right partner.
So thank you, Greg. I'm going to unmute the lines and open for questions.
Unmuted.
Let it rip. I can hear. Thought I heard somebody with a question, but maybe somebody was just muttering. So, Greg, what's been the biggest surprise with this so far?
I think the biggest surprise is the maintenance piece for us. As we kind of started up, it was really it was built to be easy to maintain, and maintaining it, the actual technology standpoint, really with Lance itself has been pretty flawless. But I think building it to kind of adapt and constantly be thinking about what's next has been a lot of mind space. And as the environment changes so fast, being able to bring metrics in and out and adapt has been, it's a dedicated thing to be able to pay attention and think about.
And you're looking at expanding this to your other customers as well, right?
Yep, we are. So the big thing for us was being able to build the environment so that it's scalable and it's really modular, so that all the clients can come online. And the longer we go through from a cycle standpoint with our clients, it becomes more and more important. So every month that goes by, we have a new client come in and talk about reporting and dashboards, and being able to educate and really have a case study and a best-in-class example of how you start from the beginning, go all the way through to reporting, has been really important for us.
Is there anybody out there that's doing extensive dashboarding right now?
No, but I have a different question if I can ask.
Go ahead.
I guess my question is, I'm going to call them indicators for lack of a better word, but you had in the Subaru example particular areas, probably there were 7 or 8, I can't remember exactly, the things that they watched to know whether or not, how to trend, how to make decisions across their trends. Is that something that you came up with, or is that something that Subaru already had in place that you mimicked and put in so that translation was pretty comfortable for them? Tell me more about the story of developing those indicators that you're watching inside that interactivity.
Yeah, it's really a combination of both. From a project basis, we really help from a statistical analysis standpoint to understand what moves and what doesn't move. But in automotive, the indicators are a little bit simpler. I think when you get into different verticals, into retail, pharmaceuticals, a lot of CPG companies, they're going to be industry and brand specific, and so we get the benefit of really seeing across the automotive landscape, what are the primary indicators. So to answer your question, with Subaru, they're defined from the business, but for the rest of our clients, they're not, and that's something that we mix with a blend of analytics and strategy.
So
is there much?
I mean, the goal at the end of the day is to measure the impact on the business of the strategy, right?
Right. And so those indicators, I think that the process for us is getting to really strong leading indicators is probably the one question. It doesn't typically get asked that way, but that's what our CMO wants to understand. So what's the impact of me spending more or less money, but hopefully when we go through that process, what are the leading indicators for me to pay attention to?
Like store visits to the dealership?
Right,
that kind of
the
thing.
Dealership. Understanding long-term brand equity so that I know what's going to happen, 3, 4, 6, 8 months down the road, and then demand indicators for automotive. A lot of leads that come out there. Website activity becomes really important, and I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of durable goods that have a longer purchase cycle. Obviously, that shifts if you're into CPG and you should talk about the trial indicators.
Okay,
but that's a good question, and it comes up with all of our clients. We hear it a lot. It's always about what's the right thing I should measure, and it's a combination of analysis and strategy.
to me, that just seems to be the biggest barrier towards moving this way, is that when customers have stuff that's inbred, or, in your case, Subaru or somebody else, has indicators that they're watching, but in reality they're not the leading indicators, is a barrier, is finding ones that really are leading at this point, given especially the dynamic changes in the marketplace for a lot of machine. I'm thinking of right now a couple of clients that are more like machine tool manufacturers, where it's the indicators all seem to be goofed up. The indicators are no longer indicating the outcomes like they used to. So finding them is an issue.
Yeah, so I will say, if there hasn't been a whole lot of exploration in the space, one of the things that we really hammered home, especially for Subaru, is that they've got a lot of indicators they're paying attention to. Now, it turns out that they do a pretty good job of giving insight on what's going to happen down the road, but for some of our other clients that it's not that clear. It's like, what are those indicators? Or the ones that they've got, they're not quite sure how well they map to sales. From an analysis standpoint, really the objective approach into there is get them all in the same place and then start building, predictive models and correlations. And one of the things that that we find, especially for Subaru, is that we can put together a data mart, a data set, and run correlations on 100 different metrics and 200 derivations of those metrics, and we can do it in 15-20 minutes. And what comes out of that is now you've got correlations to all your indicators in relationship to the rest of the indicators that are available. And so for Subaru, a lot of the indicators that are predefined do a very, very good job. But there are some that don't do as good of a job as something else. I think one of the interesting folks, if there's anybody out there from retail, my favorite question we used to get from a retail standpoint is, how much does gas prices influence my sales? And being able to work with that metric is fun, but only until you stack it next to a bunch of other leading indicators. You have a sense, does it actually help me, hurt me, or is it just a red herring?
I think that's my biggest question looking at forward is so many of the indicators seem to be confused and don't lead where they used to lead, or they're not performing like they used to in the current economy, that it becomes a barrier to moving forward, not understanding the
indicators. We've seen a lot of switch in credit and spending, haven't we?
Absolutely. And so it's great, but I just think to me, that's a huge piece that has to be worked out and looked at in terms of how people find that. So.
Fantastic. Yep. Any other questions floating around out there?
No, I'd just like to be able to send you guys an email in a couple of days when I think about it. Can you put your screen back up that has everybody's email address on there?
Absolutely.
And then I'll write them down and email you in a couple of days.
Hey, Greg, we're wondering, now that you've got the base website and a lot of the architecture figured out, how long would it take to get another client on board, assuming you could, source the data that was required to answer those key questions?
So
what percentage of the work
through that, and going from really that first meeting and defining the indicators is a matter of days. And so we've done that on a lot of our other clients, really just as a show and tell. I think that the challenge for us is going down the path of sourcing the data on a recurring basis. So putting the data into the SQL Server and connecting to MicroStrategy and producing dashboards. We've done that for numbers of our clients, but it's in an ad hoc standpoint. And so building the process out to capture a data set and build that to be recurring, we think is probably more like a 4 to 6 week process with maybe 20 to 30 hours of actual dedicated time from inception to dashboard.
Thanks.
Anybody else out there with a burning question?
Nope, thank you very much.
Nope. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Our emails are here. If you have any thoughts afterwards,